ahead and get started. First, this morning's sessions are healing the hurt and attachment. But before we get started with that, let's do some introductions. My name is Martha Bieber. I train for the CBC program. I actually have been working in the field of child welfare for a little over 30 years. First as a caseworker for Allegheny County Children, Youth, and Families, both in their intake department, as well as their adoption department. And from there, I worked for a program called the Statewide Adoption Network. If you haven't heard of that, as you go along in the process, you will definitely hear of the Statewide Adoption Network. I actually worked for them right when the program was being initiated in the state of Pennsylvania. And then from there, I worked for Catholic Charities of Pittsburgh as permanency director. But through that, we had a small foster care department, adoption, as well as I ran a group home for women who were pregnant and homeless and over the age of 18. 5 years ago, I became self-employed. And so what I do is I work with children in the foster care system for various foster adoption agencies throughout the greater Pittsburgh area and Somerset. Doing that, and I also trained caseworkers for the state through a program called the Child Welfare Resource Center. So with that said, I'm also an adoptive parent. My son is 31 years old, and I have a 3-year-old granddaughter out of that relationship who is the light of my life. So with that, let me find out about you. How did you come into this, to make this decision to pursue, and what agency you're with? So whoever wants to go first.
We'll go first.
Okay.
Jen and James from Pittsburgh, and we're with the Children's Aid of Somerset, and we always knew that we wanted to have a family, and it didn't matter if it was biological, foster, or adopting.
Okay.
So it was highly recommended to go with the Children's Aid of Somerset.
Okay, sounds good. Next.
Carolina and Jeff Moran, we're from the Sweet Pea area, and we're very new to this. We have only had one visit from the family recruiter at our home. We don't have a file, we don't know what to expect, so we don't.
So you're at the very beginning, so you're like mold, we can mold, okay.
And we feel a very strong calling in our hearts to become foster parents. We don't have children of our own.
Okay.
And at this age, it's probably not going to happen.
Sure,
So,
sure.
We would like to welcome a child or children into our home and just see what is in store for us.
Okay, sounds good. And you guys?
Barry and Amanda, we've been foster parents for 13 years through the county. We've adopted 5 or taken legal sole of 5 children,
Wow.
bringing our total to 9. A grandchild on the way in August, and we just recently went with Adopt By.
Okay, so you could really teach us a few things through your experiences.
Can I have your phone number?
Yeah, really. Well, one of the things I always recommend is as you go through this, and I learned this as an adoptive parent, you can't do this alone. You really do need a support system of people who get it. And sometimes your family and your friends are not the people who necessarily get it. You know, they may say, well, that child should be grateful for everything you're doing for them. And they don't get, why the child is acting the way that they do. So you really do need a support system of people who have either adopted or, are foster parents, so that you have those people to turn to who do understand what it's like to be in your shoes. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. As I said, the first topic we're going to talk about is healing the hurt. And this was a topic that's been developed, over the course of a number of years. And what our objective is during this course is to kind of take a look at defining abuse. And there are different types of abuse that occur among children in the foster care system. hopefully through this course, you'll develop a better understanding of what the impact is of abuse on children, and also to help develop a better understanding of how not only the child's early life experiences are going to impact your ability to parent them, but how your early life experiences also will impact how you go about parenting that child. And both you and your husband or your spouse may have had very different upbringings. And so one of the important things that we'll talk a little bit about is how to take a look at how you were raised, what you bring into the marriage, and then ultimately what you bring into parenting. Because, you know, if you were raised very differently from each other, that's going to have an impact on how you are going to parent a child. And a child that comes to you through foster care or adoption is going to be parented very differently than a child who is born into your family. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then hopefully give you some skills of how to help these children heal from their hurt experiences. So, starting out, one of the things that's important for you to understand is that, as I said, your life experiences, including your early life experiences, is going to impact your parenting style. And so you should have this in your packet. It's what's called the Olson map. Does that look familiar to you? Oh.
We don't have anything.
Okay, well, we'll work through this. Let me see if I might have an extra copy. I was going to say mine's written. My extra copy's written on, but I'll give it to you though. Just sure. There you go. Now, when you look at this map, you know, it can be very confusing. But what this map is, it's called the Olson map. And it's a way of looking at family dynamics as well as how families function. So, and it's important for you to understand that how your family style, how you communicate, both, as I've been sort of repeating myself, both as you grew up as well as what you currently, the type of child that, how you currently function and communicate is going to impact versus having a child who probably is coming into your home that has very different experiences than what you have had. So if you take a look at the chart, it's divided into 4 grids. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then those grids are divided into 2. We look at how a family is cohesive versus, and cohesiveness is closeness, how they communicate, how they relate to one another, versus adaptability. How do they function in real life? How do they adapt to different life experiences? So from there, if you look, across the top is how we look at cohesion, and then down here is how you look at adaptability. And when it's broken down, and even in each of these grids, it's broken down even further. For example, in this upper right hand, you have families that are chaotically disengaged versus someone who's flexible. So as it's broken down, there are different extremes. There's different extremes of cohesion. There's different extremes of being adaptable. And that's how this is broken down. For example, when you look at families, their cohesion, you have one extreme of where you have families that are, they don't have any closeness, they're not loyal to one another, and like it seems like every member of the family is kind of working independently versus families where the other extreme end is they're very loyal, they're dependent on one another, like even to the extreme, they can't function, one family member can't function outside of the family. And so those are like extremes. And then you have the extreme manners of adaptability. For example, you might have a family where it's very chaotic. There's no one that's in charge of things. And in these types of families, there's a lot of drama. No one has one role change. Their role change may frequently change. Discipline may be real erratic because there's no one that's in charge. And so for kids, it's like you're living in that kind of a situation where no one's in charge. Sometimes the kids have to take charge. And then you have the extreme where the family might be extremely rigid, where you have one person who's the authoritative person, their roles seldom change, very strict discipline. And so when you take a look at these different things, there's in the middle are probably your types of family functions where it's sort of a blend. They're kind of in the middle. There might be some level of rigidness, but usually, families that are in the middle are pretty flexible. There might be some structure, whereas the further out in the chart you go is where you get your extreme situations. So, most of the children that we work with are probably going to fall in this upper left-hand corner, because this is where it's chaotic. There's no leadership, things are a lot of drama. They're disengaged. There's no sense of closeness, and so that's where a lot of these children may come out of, versus the exact opposite end where it's very rigid, it's very meshed. A lot of these families are families where there may be sexual abuse because of their rigidity, they may cut themselves off, or they cut off from other family members, a lot of secrets, because, in this rigid kind of environment, that is very easy to hide, versus these two, these are family in the upper right-hand corner, because these are where it's chaotic and they're meshed. There's a lot of drama, these are types of families that thrive on crisis. And then down here, these are families that may present as being very close, but they're really not. And so what I want you to do is take just a couple minutes and try to figure out this chart. As I say, it can be a little confusing, and see where you might fall into the grid. And we'll talk about that. I'll give you about a minute or two. Talk about it and see if you can figure out where you might fall into that grid. Okay, the definitions, like for cohesion, are across the bottom, and then adaptability, the different definitions go down.
He said not here.
We're not in the, okay. Yeah, so don't be extreme. Okay,
I said not here.
oh, okay, and that will,
So,
I think they probably never hit me.
yeah. That's right.
But I still don't think it's extreme. Not to some degree. I can probably write that down. Be honest. I don't think I'm probably never going to do that.
You're what?
Okay. Any ideas where you might fall in? And do both of you fall in the same in terms of the family that you grew up in? Give me some comments. Any thoughts? Or you just don't know?
We believe we're structurally connected
Okay. Okay.
as far as what I grew up in.
I did grow up structurally connected.
Okay. So in other words, in your family, the leadership was sometimes shared among your parents. The roles were stable. You didn't have this erratic change in roles. Somewhat democratic discipline, and then change when the change demanded. And then connected was, there was loyalty, there was independence. Anyone else?
We're the same. I was anyhow.
Okay.
Yeah, structurally connected, yeah.
Okay.
Growing up and even now.
And even now, okay. Any idea for you guys, or any?
Pardon?
Any ideas where you might stand or not?
We're not in the
undecided?
same buckets for sure. We've always known that we're not in the same bucket.
Okay.
And I think it's like for my immediate family, we're all the same. Whereas they have a very close family, but they are like the if I take he and his sister, they're in a different bucket. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Even though they're-
Absolutely.
So that's what we're trying to figure out. How does that work? Because the perception is we're here, but then if you bring in another, like a sibling,
Right.
it's not the same bucket.
Right. And that's what. So the next question is, do you fall in the same grid now? And I think you guys said yes, that you did as growing up.
Well, I did. I would say mine was a little more chaotic
Okay.
due to certain circumstances.
Okay.
My mother had been sick for a number of years, just in and out of hospital for some medical issues. She got better, and my father became mentally ill.
Okay.
So there was always like,
Some role reversal sound
I
like.
think there's some more reversal and so on, but it was always just we had I'm one of 6 children.
Okay.
So we ended up really, the children became
Self-sufficient.
self-sufficient.
Okay.
Each other and less parental figures, but at the same time still trying to keep it. So it was somewhat chaotic and
But the period of time where both your parents were at home and capable, it was
structured.
Okay. So now, are you one of the oldest of the 6, or
I have 2 older and 3 younger, so I'm in the middle.
you're kind of in the middle? Okay.
But the one older.
So now, taking a look at this, and certainly not, well, you have identified children, but we recognize that most of the children that we're dealing with are coming out of homes that are in this upper right-hand corner where they're chaotic, disengaged. What do you think would be some of the challenges, given that you're in a different part of the grid? What are some of the challenges that you may face in parenting these children?
Well, we were talking about that on the way here, and we can only guess. But these kids are aware that we, in this case, are not their parents. So they
Sure.
will resist. You can't tell me what to do, and
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing.
And that is one of the challenges of becoming a parent to that child, where depending on what their circumstances and what their situation is, that will be one of the things that they may throw at you. We don't need to listen to you. So what are some of the other challenges that you can think of? And we'll talk solutions a little bit later.
I think some children have personalities where they thrive in a chaotic environment, or like to be what I call animated. Maybe it's traumatic. So if you want them to be the best version of themselves, I wouldn't want to change that about them per se.
Okay.
I guess that's what I'm saying, is like, it might be a personality, it may not just be their environment.
Mhm.
But, yeah, I guess when you go to the extremes, it's really hard to place someone else in an opposite extreme.
Sure. And so would you say that one of the things, part of that, what they've learned is maybe part of their personality, that you want to focus in on the positive part of that, and try to, I can't think of the word I want to use, try to...
Meet in the middle, kind of.
Yeah, and just really work with them and turning that into, what could be potentially a negative characteristic into something that is positive. Especially if they're a child who's active, very engaging, very, you don't want to thwart that. You want to encourage that. So, any other challenges that you can think of off the top of your head?
It really depends on the age.
Okay.
When you have the little ones,
Yes.
it's a whole different ballgame. When you start getting the older ones, it's another whole set. We have
Yes.
things with them. And the older ones, what I see is, you're trying to get them ready for life. Because, at that point, I mean, you are from a young age, but it's a whole different, I mean.
Yes.
as
You've
they
got
get older-
longer to work with them.
Yeah,
And,
exactly. You have a long time to work with them as they're younger, but as they're older, you're getting them in as they're older, and they're coming with nothing. They're
Yeah.
coming from, no, but they're craving that. Kids are craving that, and you're trying to show them that, what I mean, and where they want to be and what they want to do, and what life's all about, what the real world's about,
Sure.
and what they need to do to get prepared for that
Yeah.
is, you got a short time to do it.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
like-
Yeah. So it's helping to show them what life is like, what it appropriately, different ways to function in this world in appropriate ways. And you have a shorter period of time, obviously, with an older child versus a younger child.
With that being said, there's like all kinds of different ways in life to succeed. And some kids, you have to try to find what but the bottom line is they have to live on their own. You know what I mean? They have to be able to survive on their own. We all have to have our jobs. We all have to. So, you have to show that. Those are the important things to show them. Doesn't mean that they're going to live the way you live.
Exactly.
And they have to live that way because that's not, what I mean? It's like they can, but they do have to function.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and showing them those different ways. So, okay, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about the different types of abuse that we define here in Pennsylvania. There's 4 different types of abuse. There's neglect, there's physical, there's sexual, and there's mental and emotional abuse. Now, in Pennsylvania, we define the definition of child abuse as an act that's intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly engaging in neglect, physical abuse, or sexual abuse. So what it is, it's a person who acts intentionally, they know what they are doing, when they consciously engage in conduct. A person acts knowingly when they are aware that their conduct will cause such a result. And a person acts recklessly when they consciously disregard a substantial and unjustifiable risk. So for example, an example of that would be we oftentimes focus in on the person who's doing the abuse, with the physical abuse. But if you have a parent who knows the abuse is occurring, and it can be validated, they are just as guilty as the person who's doing that, and can be prosecuted for that, for knowingly not doing anything to stop it. So now, when you look at neglect is the failure to provide adequate, essential food, clothing, shelter, or medical care. And when we're talking, we're talking minimal standards. Are they providing the minimal, or as we define, adequate? So one of the things that happens when a caseworker, a county agency receives a referral, they go in to investigate. One of the things that, and depending on what the referral indicates, one of the things, if it's indicating neglect, one of the things they're going to look in the cupboards, they're going to look in the refrigerator. Is this family providing the child with adequate food, shelter, medical care? Individual health. Is what they're doing threatening the child's well-being? And this includes situations when the behavior might have occurred one time or prolonged or repeated. So anyway, that's how we define child abuse, neglect. And then back to the physical abuse, it causes bodily injury. So the act or failure to act, and the failure to act is where I was saying, where a person, maybe another parent, fails to act to protect the child from the person who's doing the abuse. A reasonable, and one of the things that is considered is that a reasonable person would consider it to be substantial pain. And that's where when a child goes in the emergency room, one of the things that the doctors weigh heavily on, well, first of all, is there the physical evidence? Is the injury and the parent's story, do they go hand in hand? Is it reasonable? And then one of the other factors is it reasonable to expect that this injury caused substantial pain to the child? Creating a reasonable likelihood of bodily injury. Again, the act or failure to act. The other thing that is taken a look at, or one of the other definitions of abuse, is a parent who fabricating, exaggerating, or inducing medical symptoms or disease that results in harmful medical treatment or evaluation. This condition is what we call Munchausen syndrome. From my personal experience or my professional experience, it doesn't happen often, but it happens enough. And it's difficult to detect. You have a parent who appears to be very sincere, very caring about their child, bringing their child for medical attention, but it's all part of the syndrome that they have this need, so to speak, to fabricate, to exaggerate, or induce these medical symptoms because they, it may be difficult for you and I to understand, but in their eyes, it's, creating attention, and it's attention seeking, so to speak. So some of the physical acts, in addition to are kicking, biting, throwing, burning, unreasonably restraining or confining a child, forcefully shaking a child under the age of 1. What we know is a child's brain development under the age of 1 is still developing, and if you shake that child, it can cause permanent brain damage. Forcibly slapping or striking a child under the age of 1, once again, can cause permanent brain damage. Causing a child to be present at a meth lab. It's I know, it's difficult to understand, but it does happen. Yeah, knowingly leaving a child in the care of a convicted child abuser. And you think, why would they do that? But unfortunately, it does happen. And then causing the death of a child are all things that fall under the definition of child abuse, physical abuse in Pennsylvania. Now, sexual abuse is a whole another matter. Sexual abuse or exploitation, or creating the likelihood of sexual abuse or exploitation. Once again, we estimate, I think the most recent statistics I've seen is that about 90% of children who come into the foster care system have either been sexually abused or been exposed to inappropriate sexual materials for a child their age. So they may not have been, physically sexually abused, but they've been exposed to inappropriate sexual material. Once again, it can be the person who's the act, and we have the idea that, it's a stranger who oftentimes does the sexual abuse. When oftentimes it's not someone who's a stranger, it's someone who is close to that child or has the ability to get close to that child, and they develop a rapport. It might start off very slowly over time until they gain the child's trust, and then it becomes a game. Like, this is just between you and me. You don't need to tell anyone. And that's how the perpetrator, gets that child. They have to gain the trust of that child in order for them to do that. It can be a parent. It may be someone who's a close family friend. But, it can be a stranger, but more often than not, it is someone who is close to the family. If the parent is aware of the abuse and fails to act, they can be prosecuted just like, the person who did the act. It's causing a child to engage in or to assist another individual to engage in sexually explicit conduct as well as conversation. As I said, oftentimes it's, it doesn't have to be a physical act, but just engaging in inappropriate material. It's consensual activities between a child who is 14 years of age or older and another person who is 14 years of age. Consensual activities between a child who is 14 years of age or older and another person who is 14 years of age or older and whose age is within 4 years of the child's age are excluded as sexual abuse unless it involves the use of force or coercion. That is sort of the exception there. So, any questions? Okay, and then the final one is the mental abuse. And this is probably one of the more difficult ones, to I don't know the word diagnosis, but to detect, I guess is the proper word. Mental injury, or it's the act or failure to act, includes causing or substantially contributing psychological conditions diagnosed by a doctor or a licensed psychologist. It causes the child to have anxiety, agitated, depressed, socially withdrawn, psychotic fear for life or safety, interferes with the ability to achieve appropriate development on social tasks. So a child who's being exposed to, say harsh, verbal criticism, or just, it instills that fear of, and it can be seen in all the other types of abuse. But mental abuse is tough and probably one of the more difficult things, to treat. It's not just the physical abuse himself or the sexual abuse, but then the sort of the mental and what that child goes through mentally. And we'll be talking about that throughout the morning. Now, a little bit about mandated reporting. Any person who, through their employment, volunteerness, you as a parent, you are required to report any suspected child abuse. For example, a mandated reporter is a person who is required to make a report of suspected child abuse. You do not have to prove the child abuse occurred, but you have to suspect it based on anyone who comes in contact with a child in the course of employment, your occupation, practice of a profession, or regularly scheduled program activity or service, such as volunteers in child care programs, paid employee or volunteer, foster or adoptive parent. As I said, suspected is the operative word. Teachers are required to report any suspected child abuse. And that is really difficult for teachers. It puts them in a really awkward position because teachers will say, I don't want to be responsible for a child getting removed from their parents if it's not true, if I'm not. And so one of the things that in the field we constantly tell teachers, you don't have to prove it. That's not your job. But for example, if you have a child, if a child tells you this is what's happening at home, you're required to report it. If a child, for example, comes into school and they are every day starving, and so they're not getting meals, they're not getting fed at home, or they're coming to school it's 4-degree weather and they're coming to school in summer clothes. Those are some of the things that, that would be an example of neglect. If they come into school with unexplained bruises or, bruises that just don't add up, you're required, and as a foster parent, adoptive parent, if the child tells you something, you're required to report it. It's up to the county child welfare, or in the case of adopted, the regional Department of Public Welfare, to investigate and make a report. So, any questions? Let's see here. And then there are permissive reporter, or individuals who are encouraged to report suspected child abuse but are not required by law. And to make a report, you only need reasonable cause, as I've been sort of alluding to suspect based on circumstances, observations, familiar, and feelings about the incident. Just, as the child's telling you the story, if it just doesn't, add up right. And then mandated reporter must receive 3 hours of approved training in child abuse recognition and reporting training. This includes foster parents. And if you haven't done so already, as you go along, it's an online course that just kind of educates you on what's involved in child abuse and how to report it. So, any questions? Yes?
Yeah, going back to sexual abuse, we've been looking into the internet,
Yes.
information about this, and I came across this video that talks about child-on-child sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
That is a lot more common than we know.
Yes.
But it goes unreported because most of the times it's either neglected or not known about because it's between children. To me, it's very confusing. At what point is it considered child-on-child abuse, and what is considered just natural curiosity and unsupervised development of kids?
Yeah, good question. Wish I had a good answer. There is that natural, especially with children who are toddler age, 4 to 6 years of age. Yes, there definitely is that normal curiosity about body parts, about, especially between boys and girls, the differences in their bodies. But for children who have been sexually abused, that curiosity can have a tendency to go even further. It's not uncommon, and one of the things that as agencies we always recommend is if you bring children into your care, such as 2 separate situations where there may be suspected sexual abuse, you want to make sure that you take precautions. especially at night. You may want to make sure that those children are in separate bedrooms with maybe a lot of foster parents. I don't know if you guys do this, put the alarm on the door.
We got you.
Yeah. Because, you know, as foster parents, you have to sleep at some point in time, but you want to make sure the kids are safe. And so what you want to do is to make sure that, you know, in the middle of the night, if a child gets up, especially like a child who may be older. So it does happen. I'd like to think, I don't know percentage-wise what the percentage of children who are in foster care get abused by another child. But, you know, it does happen.
We've had a lot of young ones through our house, and I don't think we've ever had one case like that where a kid was abusing my kid, right?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we've done a lot, so.
It's not that common.
rare. It's very rare, yeah.
Well, and the other thing is when the child comes into your home, as we're talking throughout the morning, you're going to be the healer. You're going to begin that process of healing. I'm sort of jumping ahead, but this is a good part. One of the things that you'll want to do is to sit down when that child first comes into your home and have a discussion about what happens in your home. How, you know, when we are in the bathroom and the door is shut, we don't go in. You know, we respect each other's privacy and kind of set like the ground rules for how hugs are shared, how, you know, we respect privacy, we don't go into someone's room without asking permission, that kind of thing. And that just helps to keep it safe. And I always use the example, I was in a training, this was years and years ago, and the trainer was telling us, he was training us as workers about sexual abuse. And he calls it the safety contract that he always does with families that he works with. And he was giving us the example of a couple who came in, and the husband said, you know, and he had given them all a homework assignment to go home and have this discussion with the kids in their home about what happens. You know, we respect each other, we don't walk in on each other, you know, you're not going to be touched inappropriately, you know, things that are down on a child's level. And this husband was giving the guy a hard time. He said, our kids have been with us for 5 years. You know, they know that we're not going to sexually abuse them. But the trainer challenged him and said, still do the homework assignment. So the couple went home, had the discussion, came back, I think it was the next week, and the husband, you know, had his head down, and he said, yeah, we did the homework assignment. We talked to the kids about sexual abuse and how it wouldn't happen. And the littlest one who, well, the kids have been there for 5 years. I want to say the littlest one was like 11. So he was like 6 when he was placed. And he said, oh, that's a relief because we were wondering when it was going to start. So for 5 years, these 2 kids just kind of held back, not knowing. And so it's just sort of, you want to have that discussion because what kids don't know, they're going to imagine. And if you think about it, they're going to be somewhat expecting your household to maybe be similar to their household. And in their household, if it was normal to be abused, normal to be, you know, sexually, you know, touched, they're going to expect it unless it's clearly defined to them that doesn't happen. So, okay. All right, let's take a look at, now we've talked about the abuse and, okay, I jumped ahead. In your packet, if you don't have it, it's okay. We're going to take a look at some of the ways, so do you have a handout that says case summary neglect in your packet? If you don't, I made extras because I'm used to. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you did anyway. Okay, what I want you to do is to read through this case example. And this is an example of neglect. give you a couple minutes to read through it, and then we're going to discuss it. Just hold on to these. Let me know when you're finished reading. Have you had a chance? Everyone done reading? Okay.
Just one page.
Yeah, just the one page for right now. Okay, so this is a summary of Jennifer and her family. Tell me, what are some examples of neglect that were reported?
Children were dirty.
Okay,
Utilities were off.
okay,
And there was all kinds of adults and pets going in and out.
Unsupervised.
okay,
It sounded like at times they were living in different homes.
okay,
Head lice.
Which would be probably additional medical,
what was that?
additional lack of medical attention.
Okay,
Kids are dirty. Oh, okay. That's it.
let's see, yeah, that was the first one. What are some others?
Drug paraphernalia in house.
Yeah, that's a big one. That one alone, I would think.
Anything else? Okay, so we listed areas of neglect. Kids were dirty, utilities were off, adults and pets coming in and out of the household, unsupervised, head lice, frequent moves or,
Staying with friends.
yeah, staying with friends. which does is a definition of homelessness. If you do not have a stable home environment that your name's on, just they call it couch surfing. If you're staying with friends, that is a definition of homelessness. So drug paraphernalia, lack of medical, head lice. So, okay, take out now the second one. I put them there on your table. The one that says physical abuse summary. And if you could read that, and then we'll talk about your findings. Has everyone had a chance to get through?
Almost.
Okay. Okay, tell me, what are some of the signs of physical abuse in this?
Bruising.
What's that?
Bruising.
Bruising?
Self-report from the child.
Okay.
And the mother herself even said something like she was going to hurt them if they were out of control.
Right? Yeah, in the very beginning of that paragraph where. Anything else?
Abandoning.
Okay, bruising, self-report, the mother reporting, abandon. So, okay, we're building upon something here. So take the sexual abuse one and read through that. You had a chance to get through it? Okay, tell me, what are the evidence of sexual abuse in this scenario?
The child's self-report.
Okay,
Video.
okay,
Child's fear of specific people or inability to talk about incidences.
mm-hmm,
And her medical symptoms like migraines and sleeplessness.
yep. Anything else that jumps out at you?
How the children were willing to go live with, what was it, family, alternative family.
Mother's report of being proud of conducting such acts.
Okay, so what we've done with all three of these situations, we've reported kind of the factual information with the neglect, the children being dirty, the lack of medical, the physical abuse, there's the bruising, there's the self-reports. With the sexual abuse, it's, the child self-report. But let's turn our attention now to looking at the connections and how they pull together. Because there is a connection between experiences that children have and the behaviors. And we're going to talk about the behaviors and the feelings next. And so it's going to be helpful to you to be able to understand taking these factual information and making a connection between a child's feelings and behaviors as they come into your home. Because it's so easy when you bring that child into your home and they may be acting out and it's like, you think, oh, this child is such a bad child. If you can begin making connections between what their experiences are. And my personal belief is that children, or not personal, but professionally, children who can't verbalize what is going on with them or what is happening, they're going to act it out. And so one of the things that as the parent, your role is to try to help figure out what is behind that behavior. And so let's take a look at what are some of the things that happen to kids, when they're abused. So let's focus in on the feelings. If you think of a child who has been neglected or physical abuse or sexual abuse, what are some of the feelings do you think that they are going to have about themselves?
Unwanted.
Okay. Unwanted.
Unworthiness.
Unworthy. I'm not worthy.
Guilty.
Guilty.
Responsible, I guess maybe that goes with guilty.
Rejected. Guess it's unwanted.
And they're all tied in together. And you guys make some really good points. So oftentimes, these kids, they don't get the connection. They don't understand that it's not their fault. Because if you think about it, if a child's being physically abused, it's not like a parent has or at least most parents don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, let's abuse my child today. It's usually when things are not going well for the parent, the child is the easy target. But a child who doesn't have the developmental ability to process that sees it as, oh, they're yelling, they're hitting me, they're doing this because it's my fault. We oftentimes see that also with kids where maybe it's a sibling group that comes into care. That oldest sibling feels a tremendous amount of guilt and responsibility because they feel like, especially if there were drugs and alcohol, oftentimes that oldest sibling is put into the role of caring for the younger siblings to make sure they're safe if the parents passed out or if they're too inebriated to be able to care for the kids. So when the kids come into care, that child, feels responsible. I remember having two sisters who, they didn't come into care because of drug abuse or neglect, but every person who had been in a parenting role for them had died. And so they only had each other. And so the older sister felt this tremendous responsibility to take care of her younger sister. And so, so these are oftentimes the feelings that these kids feel, and they're very real. They feel, rejected. They feel responsible. They feel guilty. Any other feelings that you can think of?
They feel unsafe no matter where they are.
Oh, yes, good.
Shame, maybe?
Shame, absolutely. Yeah, I like the fact that you brought up feeling unsafe, because especially when they're first coming into your home, they don't know you from Adam, and how do they know that this is a safe place to be? And so part of your role is helping them, ensuring them that they are safe and that you are safe and that they're safe in your home. So let's take this one step further. If you are a child who's been either abused, neglected, sexually abused, and these are the feelings that you're feeling, how are you going to behave? What are some of the behaviors that you're going to exhibit?
The child would exhibit?
Yes.
Testing you. Kids will test you.
Testing.
Most of the time when a foster child comes
Shut
into
off
care-
from the world.
Wait, let me finish here.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Shut off from the world.
Shut off. So they're going to push you away. So, and what was yours?
Most of the time when they go into care, they're quiet. They kind of just,
Get the
they're
food.
backwards for the
Yeah.
first 2 or 3 months, and then they become them.
Little hell
We're
you
out of
on
that
wheels.
honeymoon period.
Yes. And in the field, we call that the honeymoon field, and we'll be talking about that later. I, as a worker, always prefer that honeymoon period come to an abrupt end before the child is placed, so that you as a family get a taste of what the child's is like before placement. But as you said,
But
sometimes
it happens, like, even if a child's been in the system for a while,
yeah.
if they happen to be moving families for one reason or another, either that family that has them is not a pre-adoptive family, or something happens that that child's not staying there anymore, it's still
The calm before the storm.
Right.
always.
Exactly. So, okay. So some of the behaviors are you're going to test. I always say that kids, even though they may not be able to verbalize this, in the back of their mind, even when they're little, they're thinking, how bad, if they've had to move, they're already thinking that they're responsible, they're feeling guilty, they're not worthy, that people don't love or care about them. So they're already thinking that already. And so, this is just one more family. And how long is it going to be before they don't want me? And so let's test the limits by kind of turning up the heat and see how bad can I be, and these people are still going to want me. So some of the behaviors would be, shutting down, being very quiet, testing. Can you think of other behaviors?
Maybe defensive.
Defensive.
Acting out.
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
say angry, but then the anger is just out of hurt.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So taking this one step further, let's put you in the role as the parent. And you're parenting a child who's been, there's, you know, the child, we know, we already listed that this is how the child's feeling, this is how they're behaving. How are you feeling as a parent trying to parent these child who's going through this?
Let me say, it's a learning process.
Okay.
The more kids you get, and each kid's different, you learn how to, we've learned how, as long as we've been in it, we've learned how to react to these things. At first, it wasn't the same as we're reacting now.
Yeah, I was going to say, has it gotten easier?
So it's gotten easier. It's gotten easier as far as how we act and how we, handle things. But it's not easier. I mean, it's still a hard thing because it's still, for the kid, to get that kid to change,
Yes.
and understand that they're safe and understand that they need to do it, just in certain ways,
Yes,
So,
yes.
The most you can educate yourself and knowing
Yeah.
why or what,
Educate.
what happened.
Yeah.
Learning as much from the child as
Good word, yeah, educate.
what the child's been through.
Mhm.
Right, and
Educate both.
which brings up a really good point. Again, is education is key. One of the things now, because you've been fostering, I don't know if the child profiles, have you received? Okay, one of the things that you will receive is what's called a child profile that will have all the information that is known about that child. Well, I said known. It's supposed to have all the known information.
If you don't get it, ask for it.
Yeah, and that's why I say educate. One of the things I always tell people to do is the one thing I know as a worker I zero in on is where that child has been, where the different placements they've been in, if they've had to move from one foster home to another, why? Is it something that maybe it was at no fault of the foster parents, but something came up within their home, maybe a death in the family or something, and they asked. But if it's because the child's behaviors, one of the questions, I would be asking is, what are those behavior? What is that behavior? How did it start? What did that other foster parent do to try to address it? And what was the final straw? Because the last thing you want to do is bring that child into your home and you do the exact same thing to try to address it when it didn't work before. But that's not to say that a child won't do okay in your home, even though they may not have done well in another home. Because every family's different.
Yeah,
And
they're
so
different.
education is...
Yeah. There's examples of that. Like we've seen it. We've seen it where they didn't get along with the foster parents.
Okay.
Just didn't fit in that home. Or it was the kids you have in your home. They didn't get along with those kids.
Right.
So there's another example like that. What else? What were some of the other examples we've seen? There's a lot of them. We've seen like different, but it's not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's just they just didn't, and the kids. It's not always the kid's fault. It's just that the kid didn't fit. In that
It didn't
home.
fit, didn't
Yeah.
meld, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a child right now that I'm working with who is doing great in the home where he's at. But he, when he came into foster care about a year ago, he was placed in a home and he did not get along with the foster parent's son, they were the same age, and but he's doing great now in a foster home with a kid who's almost the same age as him, but
It's sad. In some cases, it's sad because, like if you have the say you've adopted kids like we have, you've adopted those are not your kids. And if you bring a kid in your home and it don't fit, they're fighting with that other kid.
Yeah.
It's a hard decision, but you have to make it, and you have
Right.
to say you call your caseworker up and tell them it's not working out. Because
Yeah.
you have to take that kid that you've adopted. You can't give them back.
Sure,
So
sure.
unfortunately, it's the kid that came into your home and you brought in. It's not working out with your kids.
Right, and that child may do well in another placement. So
Also ask what kind of services
Yes.
have been utilized,
yes,
because sometimes if they have to move homes, it's not even a foster parent chance, or they might not have time to be able to take them to all the services that child might need.
Sure.
Or they don't want
That's
100 different people into their homes. You know what I'm saying? It just,
Yeah.
What
So-
she's saying by that is like, we have had, there's caseworkers, not caseworkers, but therapists. They'll come to your home.
Mhm.
You know, so your home's gonna be open up to these kids and therapists and things like that, and use them, really
Yeah.
use them. It's not a bad thing. Use
Yeah.
them, have them come to your home, because they not only help those kids, but they also help you.
Absolutely.
Those therapists help you deal with things with those kids. And
Yeah.
you get to talk to them.
I think
Yeah.
And they're good, yeah, it's great.
That's how that educate both the specific of the child and yourself.
Absolutely. That's what, yes.
I'm curious to know how much information is provided to you when you receive a foster child. Is it always consistent that they will tell you as much as they know, or will they keep things just in order to place a kid because it's an emergency? They don't know what to do with them and they need to find someone.
It depends on the situation. If you're looking at foster care, it may be an emergency situation, they're looking for a home, and so you may not get a whole lot of information up front.
but not because the caseworkers don't know. Right?
Yeah.
They
And
never
so
really
that's
teach
where
you.
you want to, find out as much
Yeah.
as you can.
Yeah.
And at some point, when I was referring to the child profile was required to be completed before you adopt a child. So if you're taking the child as a foster placement, that child profile may not have been assigned to a worker to do yet. But if you're looking at adoption, where you're taking the time, it's not an emergency basis type of situation, you should be receiving as much information that is known to the agency in writing prior to that placement.
When there is a placement, and I'm looking to you all, I understand there could be, you get no information, but when you get that call, you do have a say-so whether or not yes or no.
Yeah.
If it's
You do.
going to be a fit, I'm presuming their
Absolutely.
caseworkers are trying to do the right fit as much as possible. But if it doesn't align with your values or beliefs or your environment, you still have a choice
Right.
to say
You have a
yes or
choice.
no.
But sometimes it's fast. Yeah, you do. You do have a choice. Sometimes they're going into a home and they're taking a kid. You might get that call at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and that caseworker doesn't necessarily know all the details about
Correct.
that kid.
Sometimes they don't even know the sex
Yeah.
that's happening. We were told
And
we
if they're
were getting
calling
two
you,
girls to
they're
get
calling
there.
you to say, will you? And then in that case, you can take that kid, yeah. But and if you're not committed to keeping them, if they don't fit in your home. And if you find things out that you're afraid that you can't deal with, you can call them and they'll replace them.
Yeah.
So.
So, okay, let's move on. Time is of the essence here. Let's talk a little bit. So the whole idea is taking a look at, this is like the factual information that, we know about a child. These are some of the things that we know, the feelings, what they're feeling. And then this is how they behave. So, but you as a parent are then, have the role of trying to figure out and making those connections as to, what is that, how, based on what you know about the child. And one of the things that we know about kids with sexual abuse is it oftentimes doesn't come out until that child feels safe. So you may have a child coming into your home where it may not be known. And it's not until, because what we know about sexual abuse is oftentimes a child is told, this is a secret, something bad might happen to your parents if you tell. And so they are scared just to disclose anything. So it may not be until they're safe in your home that they disclose it. The other thing is, think about if you have a child who's acting out, look at the information that you have and see if you can put together a timeline. Because even though kids aren't able to say, oh, this is March, I'm going to start acting out in March, there may be something that happened in their past in March or in the late winter, early spring that might have been a traumatic event for them, and their bodies where they're somehow they know and they acted out. So those are some things to be thinking about as you're trying to make the connection between the behaviors and the feelings. Now, what we know about trauma, just switching gears a little bit, is it can have an impact on how the brain develops and how the brain works, especially for younger children. Doesn't mean to say that these children, we don't have hope for them and that things can't change, but sometimes it is a matter of working with that child and helping, I guess the best way to word it is rewire their thinking and how they view the world. So there's some things like, their chronic health. They may have impaired brain development. They have poor emotional health. We talk about that. If you're feeling unwanted, unworthy, there may be cognitive differences. I would say, be prepared that the kids that you come into your home are probably going to have school issues. Because if you think about it, you go to school and what's the goal of school is to learn. But if you're having to worry about, where am I going to sleep tonight going home, or am I going to come home and be abused or neglected, or, it's going to be a little difficult to, focus on school.
Just being hungry, they can't concentrate.
Oh, absolutely. So, and then behaviorally, some of the things that we see is, as kids get older, if the issues haven't been addressed, we oftentimes see, delinquency, criminal behavior. My son, when he was a teenager, we lived, outside the outskirts of Pittsburgh, but it was a small community and, small police department. And they used to laugh, they'd come with my son in tow and say, he really doesn't make a very good criminal. But, it's just, he was running around with the wrong crowd. And I would say the kids who are foster kids, they sort of gravitate to one another. And so it's learning to help, teach them better ways of dealing with life. Substance abuse, sometimes it's not uncommon, so that's one of the things that you really want to keep on top of as a child gets older and into those teenage years. And sometimes, they can turn out to be abusive if their feelings of abuse and neglect haven't been addressed. So, kids have varying degrees of impact of what the abuse has on them. And there's certain things that are going to affect how they deal with it. One of those is the type of abuse. If it was sexual, if it was aggressive, versus something that wasn't all that aggressive. The more aggression that was used, obviously that's going to have a more impact on the child. The relationship that child has to what we call the perpetrator. Was the perpetrator of abuse a parent, a close family friend, someone that they trusted, someone that they felt a real connection to? The length of time that the abuse occurred is going to have an impact. Was it a one-time thing or was it extended? Now, it doesn't mean to say necessarily that a one-time, if that one time is extremely traumatic, yeah, that's going to have an impact. But the longer the, research has shown the longer the abuse occurred, the more of an impact it's going to have. The level of secrecy, or the threats that perpetrator made on the child is going to have an impact. And then one of the key factors, especially in sexual abuse, is once it becomes known, what is the response of the parent? Does the parent, let's say for example in area of sexual abuse, if it was the father during the abuse, when it came out, did the mother believe the child? And if the mother didn't believe the child, that's going to have an impact on the child's long-term effect of how they deal with it. Other potential, I sort of skipped over this earlier, some other potential behaviors are, we know that kids who have been, and this is on the extreme of, but we have kids who are fire setters. That's going to be a question you're going to want to ask. It's not it's not usually high on people's desire for a child, but it's important for you to know. Has this child had a history of setting fires? Was the fire setting seen as just normal curiosity, or was there something behind it? Animal abuse. Sometimes animals can be very therapeutic for kids coming into foster care, but one of the questions we're asking workers as we write these child profiles are, does the child have a history of abusing animals or mistreating animals? Because if you're an animal lover and you want to think about bringing a child into your home that has the potential. Withdrawal rejection, we talked about that. And then the child's ability to engage. So now, 3 minutes. Okay, one of the things, and we'll be going more of this over in the attachment next, but there are certain steps that children take in terms of their ability to heal from traumatic experiences. One of it is the disclosure, the discovery, letting, if it was a secret, letting it out. When you think about it, if you have a problem and you've been mulling over it, isn't it sometimes just a sense of relief to get it out? Well, the same is true for children. If they have had this, secret of, abuse or neglect, that it's easier, once they get out. The next step is, are they supported? Are the people around them validating and supporting them in their accusation or their, The next thing is educating the child that it's not their fault, educating them that, especially with abuse, that it is wrong, this is not normal, this shouldn't have happened to you. And helping them to understand that they did not cause it. Because so oftentimes, as we talked about, kids think that they cause it. Yes?
Is there a transfer of guilt from the perpetrator to the children in these cases?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to presume, probably not, but we oftentimes just try to separate it
Yeah.
because of the abuse, but is there that transfer of guilt from the perpetrator to the children to help with that healing
We had a
process?
kid, and I'm still dealing with it to this day. I just the other day said something to him about it. He lost both his parents due to one was suicide, and the other one was suicide later, shortly after that. It was a year or two later. His mother had suicide. He took that very hard.
Yeah.
Very hard, and he still to this day is dealing with that, and I can see that in him. I mean, to this day, and he's out of our home now. We have a dog. We took still custody of him, and he's graduated and he's moved on with his life, but we're still a part of his life, And he wrote something on Facebook the other day. I saw it, that, and I didn't like it, but he wrote something on Facebook the other day. Was pick a song that would fit you when you die or something. And he was on. He said his was how would it help? And I said, mine would be Stairway to Heaven. So I told him, mine would be Stairway to Heaven, and the people started telling him that he was a good person. Why would he pick a song like that? I think he's still dealing with the fact that his parents, committed suicide.
That has to pay toll.
Yeah,
So.
for him to pick that song, did you see that? Did he pick that song? And I didn't.
pick it. It's one of those.
Well, but still, he picked it. Yeah, I mean, that was a song he said it would fit him for going. If he was to die, they played his funeral.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not something I would want to pick. And I don't want to see him doing it. He's a great kid. He is a great kid. I mean, he's doing a lot, and he has a lot of good people. But I just thought, is that because of what happened?
But that's
in his life?
part of the education, is helping these kids to understand this is something that shouldn't have happened to you. This is what a normal childhood should be like. The next step is in their healing process is protection. Helping them to understand that in this house, these kind of things don't happen to kids in our household, and that we will do whatever we can do to keep you safe. And then finally is helping the child, and again, it may be into adulthood or longer, to have some resolution. That it's okay to tell your story. It's okay to feel the way you do, but you can heal from this. So.